You're listening to The Last Easy Mile, a show for men who know there's more waiting but aren't sure where to begin. I'm Josh Farahi. Whether it's carving out space for adventure, being a more present and intentional father, reconnecting with your physical edge, or rediscovering a forgotten skill, this podcast is about moving from stuck to in motion. Each episode explores that in-between moment, right before the leap, when the excuses run out and something real needs to begin. We cover fatherhood, work, faith, creativity, and what it means to keep showing up, especially when no one's coming to rescue you. Welcome to The Last Easy Mile. Let's walk it. Hey guys, welcome to episode 10. It's been a wild ride so far. 9 episodes in, had a lot of great guests on, learned a lot, experienced a lot, and I wanted to take advantage of having 9 episodes under my belt and going over maybe a call to action for each episode, giving you guys an opportunity to either summarize what you've already listened to or to tease what you're going to listen to, hopefully. This will be an opportunity to learn a little bit about each guest. And like I said, maybe a refresh for folks that have already listened to all the episodes. Moving forward, I do want to encourage everyone to like and subscribe. I know everyone says it sounds cliche. It really helps creators like myself emphasize that, you know, we are doing good and there's people interested in our content, number one. And number two, it'll help me grow a community here, which ultimately is what I'm trying to do. Also, please visit www.thelasteasymilepodcast.com. Please sign up for the newsletter. I'll be sending out summaries of each episode with a call to action on each one. So if you miss an episode, you'll always get the summary. And if you like what you see, you can go back and listen to the episode. And if not, you can file it away for a later time. But at least you'll know what's happening. And I'm doing that every week for every episode. So please sign up for the newsletter and share the podcast with friends. That's a huge way that this community can grow. And any recommendation that you provide to any of your friends and family as it relates to the podcast, I really appreciate it. I need your support, so please do it. And that being said, let's jump right in. So these weren't just conversations that I was having with these guests, right? They were invitations to act. And that's the point of the podcast, right? Is I'm trying to put different topics, different subjects, different adventures in front of everybody so that I can encourage folks to get out of their routine. I mean, that's really the point of the Last Easy Mile podcast. The Last Easy Mile represents the last part of the journey that's going to be easy before you start a challenge, right? And that's where I came up with the Last Easy Mile. And I'm trying to put a good group of folks in front of you. I want to curate a group that will be ever growing week by week with having more guests on to do adventure, to learn about yourself spiritually, to get more in tune with yourself physically, mentally, the whole thing. Just to take a step back and talk about, you know, what was the genesis of this podcast for me. Ultimately, I was spending a lot of time daydreaming or night dreaming before I went to bed about things I wanted to do. I want to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I want to get out to that deer hunt this year. You know, I really want to do the White River rafting. I've heard so much about these books on spirituality and spiritual awakening. I got to get time to do all this. I want to off-road in the Moab. I want to take more advantage of the BLM and forest land we have. I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better husband. I want to do all these things, right? And then we get stuck in our routine and it becomes difficult. I mean, it just does. And I have 3 kids. I'm happily married. I run my own businesses. I get it. It's just tough. It's just tough. And so at first I thought about doing a blog. And then, you know, I got into the podcast as a consumer of podcasts in the last couple of years. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go out and do it by myself. And I'm going to try to do this and put myself out there. And what I see myself as is 2 really big things. Number one, I want to curate the best guests around the theme of my podcast as possible. And 2, I want to build a community of like-minded people, eventually go out and do adventures together, other activities, if we can grow the community. And so obviously there's other parts to the mission and it'll continue to grow and change where it needs to. But for now, that's really where the genesis comes from. I think it's important to understand a little bit about my background. I know I have touched on it in different interviews that I've done, but you know, why don't I just take it from the beginning and give a brief background? I was born in Reno, Nevada in the early 80s. My parents separated when I was a baby, and 2 different cultures. One was fifth, sixth generation American family, and the other was an immigrant from the Middle East. So it really couldn't be any different in those two households. Both my parents ended up remarrying to wonderful people, and I was blessed to live in two very happy households ultimately. And each family has its own distinct idiosyncrasies. Obviously, my mom's family was a bit more rural, more traditional American, spending a lot of time outdoors. My stepdad taught me a lot about hunting and fishing and being outside. And I did spend a lot of time outdoors. I remember as a child, we raised quail and chukar to sell off and to, I don't know, even God knows where. But I remember helping make pens for those animals and taking care of horses and all sorts of stuff as a rural kid would do in the 80s. And it was a wonderful childhood. And my dad's family was, coming here for the American dream, very entrepreneurial, hardworking, and so those two kind of, I would argue, opposite sides of the spectrum really built who I am. And so what I got good at was sharing cultural phenomena um, to people who had no experience with the other. And as a result, I became a good storyteller. I became a good communicator. And ultimately, that adversity really helped me throughout life in the long run. And so I bring that to this podcast in that I hope to communicate with you and share with you and provide you things that potentially you culturally have never touched or never felt before. And so I want to take you guys on a little bit of a journey. I'm trying to put together the best guests that I can. We've had a lot of good ones so far. But to continue my story, I left Reno, Nevada at the age of 13. Went to Vegas for a few years with my dad. And the woman he married, who I also consider my mother, because she raised me from when I was a young kid. And we spent 2 years in Las Vegas, Nevada, which was wild, especially in the late 90s. As a 16 to 17-year-old kid, I got into a decent amount of trouble, and it was pretty fun. Vegas has changed a lot since then, but it was really the genesis of the beginning of like modern Las Vegas. It was wild and it was a lot of fun. And then we came down to Southern California, where most of my dad's family had immigrated from originally, and where I joined my cousins, first cousins, second cousins, the whole thing. And so I grew up amongst family. I'm a very family oriented person. And ultimately, here I am. I'm happily married. I got 3 kids, and I've been in LA ever since. My kids are all under the age of 10. I got a boy and 2 girls. And what's nice is, even though they're growing up in LA and they have this very urban upbringing, I get to take them out to the woods and take them out hunting and fishing and camping the way I grew up, and I get to share the joy of the outdoors with them, which is huge. And I give them a little bit of a grounded perspective of how important the people between the coasts are, and what the farmers provide us, and what the ranchers provide us, and what the people who work the fields provide us. And so they have they have a much more balanced outlook than some of the other folks here in LA. And so again, I'm now having to teach 2 different cultures to my kids. So the communication and the empathy and explaining how 2 different worlds work together is coming again to the next generation, and I love it. And so with that, that's kind of a background on me. I'd love to share more as the podcast continues, and I will share more. I think I'll take an opportunity every 10 episodes or so to do a recap like this, where I can kind of go over what and who we've discussed and the whole thing, and talk about the exciting things that I want you guys to get into, and I hope you guys get into. And some of these things I've never even done myself. I had been a little selfish. The first 9 episodes were a little bit closer to my heart, and the favorite things I like to do, but we're going to expand out of that. I think the outdoors will be a large part of what I do here on the Last Easy Mile podcast, but there's a lot out there. And it's important for me to share my love of the outdoors. It's a passion, but we'll get into that more. I think spirituality is a big one. As I've gotten into my 40s, I've kind of opened up to that world, both religiously and otherwise, and exploring some of what's out there and what people believe and have written about and have studied beyond our own religions, I think is imperative and is eye-opening. And eventually we'll get into some cool topics, psychedelics, mushrooms. I think I'd like to explore that and have some experts on around that and spirituality. I want to have more hunters on. I want to have a fisherman on, fly fisherman on, ocean fishing. We're going to do a lot of fun stuff. I'm hoping to build a community. I want you guys to become part of it. And eventually maybe we do our own group adventures, and who knows where this could go. So I'm working really hard on this. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. Like I said, please give me a good review if I deserve it. Subscribe to the podcast. Go to www.thelasteasymilepodcast.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Be part of the journey. And thanks again for listening. All right, episode 1, Josh Kirshner. Josh Kirshner was a wonderful guest, and I was lucky to have him. He wrote a book, How to Become a Backpack Hunter. I will provide all his information in the summary and the show notes, as well as in the show notes for episode 1 that's already there. And I really wanted Josh to come on to inspire us adults who either haven't gone on a hunt or who are thinking about it and have done it when they were a kid, but haven't done it in a long time. I think hunting is super important because it connects us with nature in a way that is really irreplaceable. The fact that you're taking the life of an animal and then eating it ultimately gives that full circle of, without being cheesy, the circle of life, I guess you could call it. But ultimately what it gives you is a primal real life example of how we take life to eat as human beings. And we've kind of separated ourselves from that process. And we go to the grocery store and buy meat from the grocery store and we move on, and you don't see the cow or chicken get slaughtered or lamb get slaughtered. And so just from that perspective, I think it's worthwhile doing once in your life. Second of all, being outside in general on a hunt, stalking an animal, again, something in your DNA activates out there when you're hunting. And even if you're with a guide and you don't know what you're doing, it is good for the soul. I'll just put it to you like that. And so for those that are considering it, I think Josh's book is a good book, although I will say that Josh's book, he jumped into the deep end of backpack hunting without having any experience. And I don't think most of us are built that way. I think most of us have to go incrementally before we get to a backpack hunt, which, the beauty of backpack hunting is that, you're mobile, you have your camp on your back, you're not tethered to a campsite. It is difficult, frankly. And it's not something I recommend just jumping into. I think first thing I would do if I wanted to start hunting is I would start watching YouTube videos. I would start actually with Josh Kirshner himself, Dialed In Hunter on YouTube. He makes incredible videos about his hunts. They're brutally honest about the difficulty, the physicality of the hunt. And it's a good watch. I would definitely do it. Maybe read his book as well to understand some of the challenges that go into actual hunting, whether you're backpack hunting or otherwise. But I will say there are some other resources out there. That Wild Country by Mark Kenyon, great book about the outdoors and taking advantage of it. And then there's some online resources. So there's gohunt.com, GOHUNT.com. You can pick your region and what kind of animal you were considering hunting, and it'll give you a bunch of resources and different ways to get into the game. And from there, just start Googling, what gear you need to hunt. But, if I guess there's a few type of people that may want to try to do this, right? There's people who live in an urban setting who have no clue what they're doing. That's going to be the most challenging group to get into hunting. But I'm one of those people, and I hunt every few years and I love it. Then there's the people who maybe live in a more rural area, no hunters, and they're familiar with the culture. Those folks are going to have a much easier time because they may have a buddy or someone that knows, how to hunt, and they can go and do a hunt with them, or be referred to someone who will take them on a hunt, like Josh Kirshner, advised. Maybe just tag along once. I think I'm speaking right now to the people who have the higher barrier of entry to hunting. I think the best opportunity for you is to save some money up and hire a guide. And what a guide is going to do is, this is someone that knows the country that you're going to. He knows the woods, and ultimately you're going to have a safer journey, probably a more comfortable journey. And there's all sorts of different guides out there, from really luxury guides to just bare bone minimum guides. One place to start is huntingfool.com, but there's no G on the hunting. So it's huntingfool.com. They offer a great resource for hunting. I've used them before to introduce me to guides. And in fact, I want to have someone from Hunt and Fool on an episode, and I'm working on that now. But that was Josh Kirshner, great guy. He spends a lot of time and energy filming really good stuff. So I recommend Dialed In Hunter, both Instagram and YouTube. You guys should be following him. Episode 2 was with Fraser Kane. Fraser Kane has been He's a journalist. He's an astronomy journalist, and he's been doing it for a long time. Almost 500,000 YouTube subscribers. Puts out ton of video, ton of content. He's in front of everything. And the reason I asked, Fraser to join is frankly, I have a real fascination with the stars, and I think we've lost that fascination for the most part, especially in the city because we have so much light pollution. And so I had him on to just talk shop, and I'm a nerd deep down, so I wanted to just nerd it out with him, and we did. His website, Universe Today, is a great resource. And I think that episode was a lot of fun. Definitely worth a listen. We covered a lot, but I think the call to action part is what I'm going to go over now, which was what telescopes to buy, how to find dark skies to view stars, and when to go out in the dark sky. Because I think watching the night sky, if you've ever been to an area that has a dark sky and you look up, dude, it is so humbling to see what the sky looks like for most of history for human beings. And it's humbling. And you kind of see how insignificant we are, and there's a benefit to that because sometimes we get stuck in our own problems in our own world, in our own heads. And there's a relief to like looking up and seeing all that and being like, wow, what does this even mean? And so I highly recommend, I think you can go out and find a dark sky map. If you just Google dark sky map, you can find several resources that'll show you where near you can go where the sky is dark enough where there's no light pollution. And so I would definitely recommend that. He also touched on a few types of telescopes to buy if you have kids or even for yourself as an amateur, that are not price prohibitive. And lastly, what he said, which was I think was I never even really thought of this. There is an astronomical calendar, if you will. There are, for example, meteor showers that happen the same time every year. And so in the northern hemisphere, and the same thing for the southern hemisphere. And so if you go to these websites, again, just Google an astronomical calendar. You can find tons of resources out there to tell you when there's a meteor shower happening. You couple that with the dark night apps or websites, and you plan a road trip, an hour, 2 hours out of town, with your significant other, with friends, with your kids, to go out there and look at a meteor shower. And we did this after we recorded with him. We went out camping with my wife and kids, and it was we timed it at the right time where there was a meteor shower, and it was awesome. And so I highly recommend that. Give Fraser Kane episode a try. It was a lot of fun having him on. The third episode was with Kute Blackson, who is a professional speaker and teacher in the spiritual world. I read his book, The Magic of Surrender. It was a really good book, and really, again, touching on the spirituality topic. It's really about just the power of letting go. You're not surrendering to give up or to fold your cards or anything like that. It's more about being the best that you could be, achieving what you can within what you control, and then you surrender to the outcome, basically. And I'm butchering that, and I'm horrible. He probably wouldn't be happy with that explanation, but I think it was a really good episode. Kute has very interesting background. He's from Africa. He spent a lot of time in India and other places around the world, learning and sharing his spirituality with others. I think his book was definitely worth a read. It's in the show notes. It's in episode 3. It's in those show notes. Highly recommend listening to Kute. He's also on Instagram as well. Kute Blackson, just like it sounds. You can look him up and give him a follow. He was great to have on, and I'm honored to have had him. Moving on to the fourth episode with John Barklow, Be Your Own Rescue. That was a fun episode, guys. John has a great background. He was in the U.S. Navy. He was a U.S. Navy diver. He trained eventually when he got a little more senior in the Navy. He was training Navy SEALs in diving techniques, even diving out of submarines. And this guy is the real deal. I was really lucky to have him on. We spent a lot of time talking shop, and he was telling me about his time in the military and his time serving, and God bless him for serving, and I was lucky to have him, like I said. After the military, he got in with Sitka to help them. Sitka, for those that don't know, is a hunting apparel and gear brand. He started off in the early phases with Sitka, helping them design their cold weather gear. because he was training after he did the Navy SEAL stuff. He was training military folks on how to deal with cold weather and cold weather survival in Alaska. And of course, he was probably the best thing that could have happened for Sitka as far as a strategy to how to have the best clothing and implement the best technology in their clothing to help keep hunters safe in cold weather. And he kind of told us a story around that, and he was great because he kind of gave he gave his do's and don'ts when you're going outdoors. He helped put together what he called a possibilities pouch, which is it's not really an emergency kit, because he said if you call it an emergency kit, you'll never have it. It's a possibilities pouch. It's something you have on you at all times, which has a bunch of items in it to help you deal with any possibility that is within reason. That was very interesting. But he also has his own website, Knowledge from Storms. Beyond that, he's part of the Montana Knife Company. And of course, he's with Sitka. Great conversation. A lot of oh shit moments in that one, especially around training Navy SEALs. He was a really fun guest. What's great about John, and all my guests have been really authentic and really nice. So this is not me putting John ahead of anyone. But what I really loved about John was that after we ended our recording session, he spent, 20, 25 minutes with me just asking questions about me and really being, he really wanted to learn what my mission was and what I'm trying to do on the last Easy Mile. And he said he'd be back on. He'd be happy to be back on. I'd love to have him back on. And so great episode. Highly recommend it. It's been one of the more popular episodes that I've had thus far. All right, moving on. Episode 5, Nick Melillo from Foundation Cigars. So for you cigar smokers out there, maybe you've heard of Foundation Cigars. Nick Melillo is the founder. Nick started with really at 18 years old in being a tobacconist or handling the humidor of a small cigar shop in Connecticut, where he's from. This episode kind of had two basic themes to it. One, we're learning about cigars and Nick's passion for it, but also, and I don't even think this was intentional, talking about Nick's journey was really inspirational about how he kind of went through this journey and started this company and is enjoying a lot of success. Enough success that he makes, custom cigars for Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan talks about him on his podcast all the time. And Nick, again, another one of those guys, super busy, could have told me, you know what, I don't have time for a brand new podcast. Fuck off. Emailed me right back. I'd love to get on and talk shop. So thank you, Nick. That was really, really nice of you. Nick was even nice enough to send me a box of cigars, some swag, which I wear all the time to represent Nick. And his cigars are great because I'm a cigar smoker and I love them, which was another reason I had him on. So what do we talk about with Nick? Well, Nick has an incredible journey. He started, like I said, being a tobacconist in his late teens. He ended up befriending somebody in the industry at that time and started to work for that gentleman in Nicaragua, moved there for several years, helped this person build a company to one of the biggest companies in Nicaragua, if not the biggest cigar manufacturer there. After, 13 years or so, he left a really stable, cushy job with that company to start Foundation. He risked it all, rolled the dice. And it was a great story, man. And his cigars are wonderful. I'm not just saying that because he's on my show. I enjoyed him even before I had the opportunity to meet Nick. And I think if you're interested in cigars, interested in starting cigars as a hobby, cigars are a fantastic ritual. And I do call it a ritual. I called it a ritual on that episode. It's the ritual of smoking a cigar. It's one of those things where you sit down, again, just like hunting. It's something primal. It's not like smoking a joint or smoking a cigarette. You're sitting down. There's a way you light it. There's a proper way to cut it. There's a proper way to even taste it. There's all different flavor profiles. It touches all different parts of your palate. And so we talked about how to find the right cigar for you. What's a good beginner cigar? And it's really something that if you haven't tried it, you may even try it once or twice and think to yourself, God, this is not for me. But you got to give the whole ritual a chance. You got to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. Nick made a good point. He goes, some people have a cigar that's been sitting out in the sun for 10 days when they're, half drunk or drunk at a wedding and they smoke it and they're like, oh, this sucks. This is not for me. That's not smoking cigars. Smoking cigars is going to your favorite lounge or getting together with your buddies or sitting down with your wife, whatever your thing is, lighting a cigar, contemplating life, where you're going, where you've been, and having a moment to yourself. And we talked a lot about the culture of cigars, how it all, has changed since the 90s. Great conversation. Nick was awesome. Foundation cigars are wonderful. Recommend that episode as much as any. All right, episode 6, Dr. Bill Schindler. Dr. Bill Schindler is a archaeologist, anthropologist. He is not a medical doctor. He made that very clear at the beginning of our episode, but his book, Eat Like a Human, is really a really great book to jump into and understand the way that we eat today in a modern way is flawed, and how the ancient folks, our ancestors, had a lot of things right that we now have wrong. And I found Dr. Schindler, and I have his permission to call him Bill. I asked Bill, I said, Bill, I've been fascinated with, especially recently with, the emergence of this movement against industrialized food and what the fuck people are putting in our foods and what the hell we're eating and giving our kids. And that's how I found him. And I asked him, how much are we getting wrong? He said, quite a bit. Obviously. So he spent his time traveling the world with his family, really learning about each different ancient culture, what they were doing, how they were eating. He also folds in recipes of how we can eat cleaner, how we can eat better. One thing he recommended that he said was an easy thing you can start doing is cutting links out of your food chain, going to farmers markets, buying straight from the source was one of his most biggest pieces of advice. He goes, by doing that, you've already done 80% of the journey of eating better and eating cleaner. Again, his book, Eat Like a Human, was a wonderful read. I highly recommend it. Great recipes in there. Check out his website, Modern Stone Age Kitchen. He opened a restaurant that is operating in a way no other restaurant is operating. And I think he is definitely worth a follow on Instagram as well. We talked about sourdough bread and how the shit we're buying at the grocery store, most of that's not even real sourdough. Learned a lot. It was really eye-opening. We even touched on raw milk. So I'll let you listen to the episode for the details. But I think follow Dr. Bill Schindler on Instagram and go to his website, Modern Stone Age Kitchen, to learn more. Really fascinating guy, and I was honored to have him as well. All right, guys, rounding out to episode 8, Chris McKenna. Chris McKenna is from protectyoungeyes.com. Chris has dedicated his life to providing parents like myself and others resources of how to protect your kids from digital hazards, whether it's accidental exposure, obviously the predators and all the other violence that you can get online. And he's a colleague of Jonathan Haidt in the sense that they're both fighting the same fight. Jonathan Haidt, if you don't know, he's really pushing the revolution of getting phones out of kids' hands, especially in schools, which I support 100%. And Chris and I had a great conversation. Again, he's from Protect Young Eyes. The website is absolutely free. You can go through a whole laundry list of things we can do to protect our home, our devices, our children from the threats out there. And we talked a lot about really easy things you can do that we're not doing, even myself. For example, putting limitations on your router at home so that the devices can't access things on accident. And really, look, he's like, he said something to me that was really wild. He said, from any app, 90% of the apps that you can download from the App Store, you can access porn from within those apps. He made even an example of a religious application like the Bible app or something that he goes, I can even do it from that. And again, it's nothing against the Bible app or any other of the apps out there. There's ways you can go through the private policy or through some other loophole where you can access porn from that app. And even if your router is set up, even if you have all the limitations set up, once you're within that app, you're kind of in the Wild West. That was a huge eye opener. I was grateful to have Chris on. Chris takes a lot of his time going around the country, speaking at schools and other places where parents are his audience. And he's doing really great work. I encourage you to support him. I encourage you to go to protectyoungeyes.com. As a father, as a parent, it's big. This is, I think, the challenge of our time is really helping our kids navigate this crazy world, this digital world we're in. And with AI coming, it's going to be more and more important for us to be on top of it. So that episode was very important. Protectyoungeyes.com, Chris McKenna, look it up. He has resources on how to fix your router and really other great courses and classes for parents. It's all free. I couldn't express more how proud I am of Chris and how honored I was to have him. All right, episode 9, the last episode, Matt Beaudreau. Matt is from Apogee, Apogee, apogeestrong.com, where he's put a program together for homeschooling kids and also some mentorship for kids and adults. And, he's right in line with thinking of many of us out there that the school system is letting us down, and that with the values that we all grew up with are kind of being left behind in some cases. And his argument is, listen, homeschool your kids. Apogee has a homeschooling program. These are the values that you can pass on to your children. I think what he said that really, really resonated with me was education isn't just about learning books. It's about passing on a way of life from one generation to another. And that really stuck with me because ultimately as parents, that's what we're trying to do is pass on our way of life. Granted, our kids are going to take what they want from that and maybe add changes as we did to our parents. But ultimately, we're trying to pass on our way of life. We don't want it to be diluted in any way that isn't within our purview. And so he made a lot of interesting arguments. I really, really like what Matt had to say. I recommend going to apogeestrong.com. Another thing that they have on their website is mentorship for parents as well, and specifically fathers. And I think having that as part of a repertoire of maybe looking into apogeestrong.com, seeing what's out there for fathers, resources, challenges. I think you can't ever stop growing as a man. We always have to challenge ourselves to be better. And even if you feel that you're on solid footing there, whether it's Apogee or any other programs that are out there, really pushing yourself to constantly evolve and get better, I think is really an important part of the human journey. And so I definitely had a great conversation with Matt. There was a lot we covered in there that was really resonated with me. I recommend listening to that episode. It was a great episode. It was a great episode about raising kids. It was a great episode about raising strong kids. And it was a great episode on how to improve ourselves and get better as parents. So that rounds out the 9 episodes. Like I said, I'm going to take the opportunity to do this every 9 or 10 episodes or so. I think it's important just to kind of give a summary, get in front of you guys, maybe have you guys hear my voice a little bit more, learn more about me. And it's been an honor really just being in your ear. And for those listening, I really appreciate you guys supporting me and listening to me. Please subscribe, please like, please share with your friends. Again, please, www.thelasteasymilepodcast.com. Please go sign up for our newsletter. Be a part of the community. I appreciate you guys. I really appreciate everyone who's listening. I'll see you next time. Thanks for walking the last easy mile with me. If something in today's episode moved you, good. That means there's still something alive in you worth pursuing. But don't let it end here. Send the message, try the thing, start the shift. If this episode helped, like, subscribe, and share with someone else who might be feeling stuck. You never know who needs to hear exactly this. I'm Josh Farahi. Until next time, keep walking.